When you're running blower door tests, we found that on interior partitions that abut the attic spaces, you'll actually get air coming in your outlets and light boxes, and that's because that top plate where the drywall comes up beside it and the ceiling on, it sort of straddles the attic area, needs to be air sealed. As far as venting, and you'll see when the camera's up there, if your house has soffit vents, you can put baffles in. But when you put your baffles in, this is another common mistake by insulating companies and builders, you have to still air seal your soffit areas. And the concept behind that is if you have air penetrating your soffits and it goes around the baffles that you put in, it's getting into the end grain of the insulation, and then you get what you call wind washing. And there's a little description of that in the pamphlet I gave you. And what that does is now all of a sudden the cold damp air is getting in near your living space, near your top plates of your exterior walls. So even if you put in the proper vents, stable them in place, we still spray foam a blocker around that to seal it up. So the air just comes through that baffle up into your attic space. And in this case, in this house, he did have what appeared to be soffit vented perforated vinyl, but above that was solid wood. So for demonstration's sake, we still put some baffles in. We air sealed around them, but this project, we will just block the soffits up and leave the gable vents in place. And then after proper air sealing, we add the R value that's necessary. And in this case, it's going to be a National Fiber cellulose insulation to an R60. And the R60, it's important to know that by air sealing the attic, the R60 is effective. It's meaning you're getting all R60 out of that insulation. If you don't air seal anything and you just dump the R60 in there, it's probably about 50% of the effective R value. So you can see the importance of the air sealing, and it's a really positive thing for the insulation. But those are top plates that you're looking at there. Actually, it's that top plate there, and that's the closed cell foam. Can you show a top plate that's not covered up? Okay, so that's, yep. And you see the wires coming up through. Okay, so now go back to the area that's spray foam. Yep. So that's what it looks like when it's done. So that's why we cover that up. So if you can imagine, on both sides of a top plate, there's a crack. It's not very big, but when you add up the linear footage of area of top plate times 2 for both sides of the top plate, there's a lot of area where the air comes down and through there. So the top plates are very important. If you have a vented soffit, those are the baffles that you put in, and you can see we still spray the foam around it. Now, someone had asked a question about the foam. Any foam is a good air seal. So in this case, we use the open cell because it expands 100 times its fluid liquid thickness. So when you're taking up bigger areas, you can it's a little less expensive to use the open cell foam to block it off, and you still have the proper air seal. So in that case, you can see how the air would just be able to come up through the baffle and not around it. Go to one without a baffle. That's what it's going to look like in this house where he doesn't have the soffit venting. We just literally seal the soffit off completely. Now you can, if you don't have any open cell on hand, you can use a fiberglass bat to stuff in there and skim over it. You get the same. Essentially, you just don't want the air to come up and get into the end grain of your insulation. It's a styrofoam box that we built around this fan, which is in that bathroom right there. And we air sealed all around that, and we'll still skim a layer of foam over it. And then the cellulose goes on top of that. In a situation with a fan, it actually makes the fan operate properly too. Having the space around it and being completely air sealed, it actually sucks the air where it's supposed to. Also, that fan has an insulated hose hooked to it. The foil tube to the right there is actually hooks into the bathroom fan, and it's insulated by itself, but it'll also have 20 inches of cellulose dumped on top of it. Now, code states that you can't have any combustible materials up against the chimney. So in this case, we built a pan, and it's bent. You can't see the way it's bent, but it's bent in a way so that it is actually sealed up against the chimney. So it's not a direct line to the basement anymore. There's something that it's actually air sealed inside that aluminum box, but we left the 2 inches of space, and now the cellulose will actually go up against that. Couple different ways of doing it. That's probably the most common way to do it. In some cases where if we didn't feel we could accurately air seal around the chimney, we have used a product called Roxol, which is a fireproof bat insulation that we've put up against the chimney and sprayed it into the chimney. Different towns have different code officials, and some go for that, some don't. So it's up to your town officials to make sure we all comply with what they want. Lots of times, if you go even in a new home that's a couple years old, if you go in and you lift up a piece of fiberglass, you see the black, how black it is. That's actually white fiberglass bats. But if you look at the black, that's dust from air moving through it. So that's a pretty good example of why we have to air seal. Yep, that's a good picture. So an attic hatch is simply the scuttle hole that you go up through. And what will happen is around that, where the hose comes up through, we'll build a dam. And some people build them out of plywood. We tend to use 2-inch styrofoam. And the dam will be built a little higher than the thickness of the insulation. It's really just to retain the insulation. And then we'll build a lid on top of that has at least the same R value of what we're putting in the attic, which in this case is R60. And it's important, the most important thing, and this is what we see in a lot of attic hatches, they'll go through, they'll build a dam, they'll put a bat or some sort of hard foam on top of the lid, but then they'll just drop it in the hole and let it sit there. It's really important that lid is air sealed, because the tighter you make your house, the little areas, they become, it's exponential, the smaller areas, and all of a sudden these little vacuums become evident. So what we would do is on the stops we put some weather stripping, and just a couple different ways to do it. You can actually put a buckle on the lid and just something to latch it down tight so that it's airtight. And again, it comes back to the whole air sealing, because if you leave that little gap or leave something loose, the air is going to start moving. And you got to remember, temperature and air movement is 24/7. It's not like there's a switch where you can turn it on and off. This is something that's happened constantly. So it's really important to get that air sealed. Yep. So that's this side of the attic. You can see the pink baffle sticking up a little bit for demonstration purposes. This side has already been air sealed. Everything's been properly put in place. And the last thing to do is you add your insulation. In this case, cellulose has what they call an installed depth and then a settling depth. So when you're looking at a chart and if you want the R60 and you're installing it, you have to use the installed depth, and then it'll settle down several inches. But so in this case, I think 19 inches was the installed depth. So we put little sticks up, and we show that we've put in the 19 inches. And the key to any insulation is the neater it is, the more effective it's going to be. So you want to put it in there as evenly as you can, and just show a picture of the outside gable wall. And just to show you, we chase that exterior all the way around, even on the gable walls. You can see the foam to the right there. Go to your right there to the chimney. So that too gets all sealed up all the way around the perimeter. Again, that's a area, especially in the older homes that are balloon framed. It prevents that air from dropping down in those outside walls.
Better Buildings is part of a U.S. Department of Energy program that helps you with energy efficiency improvements in your home or business building. We provide step-by-step guidance to help save you money, keep you warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer, and reduce your dependence on fossil fuels. Find out more by calling 603-717-6531 or by visiting our website at www.betterbuildingsnh.com.